The lights in the briefing room cast harsh shadows across Captain Vexthel's scaled face as he studied the holographic display. Numbers scrolled past his yellow eyes, coordinates, population estimates, and most importantly, the payment amount. The figure made even his battle-hardened heart skip a beat. 50 million galactic credits. Enough to buy a small moon or retire his entire crew in luxury. Sector 7G, Planet 3, announced Lieutenant Clegtash, her 6 arms manipulating different control panels simultaneously. The insectoid's mandibles clicked as she spoke. Third rock from a yellow star. Primitive bipedal mammals. They call their world Earth in the dominant language. Vexthel's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the recycled air of the bone harvester. The mercenary vessel had seen better decades, its hull scarred by plasma burns and meteor impacts. But it had served his crew well through 100 campaigns across the galaxy's lawless frontier. What makes these mammals special? Growled Corax, the ship's demolitions expert. The massive bear-like alien leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his weight. 50 million is serious money. We could buy 3 ships like this one. Clegtash's compound eyes gleamed as she accessed the intelligence files. They have barely achieved basic spaceflight. Chemical rockets, primitive satellites, no energy weapons to speak of. Their most advanced military equipment uses explosive projectiles fired from metal tubes. A chorus of laughter erupted from the assembled crew. 23 aliens from 15 different species, all veterans of the mercenary trade. They had fought crystalline warriors who could reshape matter with their thoughts, battled hive minds that controlled entire star systems, and survived encounters with energy beings that existed in pure plasma. The idea of mammals shooting metal bullets seemed like a joke. Chemical propulsion, wheezed Slickstar, the ship's medic. The slug-like alien's breathing apparatus made wet sounds as he laughed. Do they still use wheels for ground transportation too? Actually, yes, Clegtash confirmed, checking her datapad. Circular objects that rotate around an axis. Very primitive. Vexthel raised a clawed hand for silence. Despite the seemingly easy target, something bothered him about this contract. In 30 years of mercenary work, he had learned to trust his instincts. Who is the client again? The Hegemony Collective, Clegtash replied. Mining Consortium. They want the planet cleared for resource extraction. Standard pacification contract. The captain's yellow eyes narrowed. The Hegemony Collective was one of the galaxy's largest corporations, with enough legitimate security forces to handle a primitive world themselves. Why hire outside mercenaries? Sir, interrupted Zephylos, the ship's communication officer. The blue-skinned humanoid's head tentacles twitched nervously. The collective's representative is requesting final confirmation of mission acceptance. Vexthel looked around the briefing room at his crew. These aliens had followed him through battles that should have killed them all. Clegtash had lost 2 arms in the Rigel system fighting automated defense platforms. Corax still carried shrapnel in his massive chest from a syndicate bombardment. Slickstar had saved all their lives more times than anyone could count. They deserved one last big score. One final mission that would let them all retire with honor. What are their defensive capabilities? Vexthel asked. Clegtash manipulated her controls, bringing up tactical assessments. Minimal orbital defenses. A few space stations for communications and research. No energy shields detected around major population centers. Their largest military vessels are confined to their atmosphere and cannot achieve escape velocity while armed. The data was almost insulting in its simplicity. The planet's inhabitants had nuclear weapons, but they were crude fission devices that would barely scratch modern military armor. Their most advanced aircraft moved slower than a cargo shuttle and carried weapons that relied on chemical explosives. What about their numbers? Asked Yorok, the ship's tactical officer. The one-eyed reptilian had served in 3 different planetary militaries before joining Vexthal's crew. Approximately 7 billion inhabitants, Klektesh read. They're divided into multiple competing political entities. Our intelligence suggests they spend most of their military resources fighting each other rather than preparing for external threats. Korak slammed his massive fist on the table, making several smaller crew members jump. 7 billion primitives with metal bullets against the bone harvester. This is not even a fair fight. That's what bothers me, Vexthal muttered. The captain's instincts still whispered warnings, but the payment amount was too tempting to ignore. His crew had been taking smaller contracts for months, barely covering ship maintenance and supplies. The galaxy's major powers had been cracking down on mercenary activities, making lucrative work harder to find. "Sir," Zephylos called again. "The collective is waiting for our response." Vexthal stood, his 7-foot frame casting a shadow across the holographic display. Analysis: 1 primitive world, minimal defenses, divided population, obsolete technology. Crew assessment: 23 experienced military personnel, ship-to-ship weapons, orbital bombardment capability, personal energy weapons. He paused, looking each crew member in the eye. Payment: 50 million credits, enough to retire in luxury on any civilized world. Risk assessment: minimal. The captain's scaled lips pulled back in what other species might mistake for a smile, but was actually a display of sharp predatory teeth. Mission accepted. Set course for Sector 7G, 3-day transit at maximum hyperspace velocity. As the crew dispersed to prepare for the mission, Vexthal remained in the briefing room, staring at the holographic image of the blue and green planet. Something still felt wrong about this contract, but he pushed the feeling aside. After 3 decades of mercenary work, he had earned the right to be cautious. But he had also earned the right to one final, profitable campaign. The ship's engines hummed to life, their vibrations traveling through the deck plates under his feet. In the distance, he could hear Korax explaining to the newer crew members how primitive chemical weapons worked. The weapons expert found the concept both amusing and fascinating. Metal projectiles fired by controlled explosions, Korax was saying. Like throwing rocks, but with extra steps. Vexthal finally allowed himself a genuine smile. 3 days to the target. 1 week for pacification. Then 50 million credits and a comfortable retirement on a tropical world, where the biggest danger would be choosing which drink to order at the beach. The bone harvester jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew toward what they believed would be the easiest mission of their careers. In the ship's databanks, the intelligence file on Sector 7G remained unchanged, listing the 3rd planet as inhabited by primitive mammals with obsolete technology and no significant defensive capabilities. None of them noticed the small warning buried deep in the galactic navigation charts. A single line of text, easily missed among thousands of similar entries. Sector 7G, Planet 3. Navigation hazard. Contact Galactic Council before approach. The bone harvester dropped out of hyperspace with a shudder that ran through every deck plate. Captain Vexthal gripped his command chair as the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated briefly. Around him, the bridge crew worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. "Hyperspace exit complete," reported Ensign Quillock, the ship's young navigator. "We are at the edge of the target system." Vexthal nodded, then turned to Lieutenant Klektesh at the sensor station. "Full system scan. I want to know everything about this primitive world before we announce our presence." The insectoid's 6 arms danced across her controls. Her compound eyes reflected the blue glow of the sensor displays as data streamed across the screens. For several seconds, the bridge was quiet except for the hum of ship systems and the soft clicking of Klektesh's mandibles. Then she froze. "Sir," Klektesh said slowly, her voice carrying a tone Vexthal had never heard from his usually confident lieutenant. I am reading multiple artificial structures in orbit around the third planet. Structures? Vexthal leaned forward. What kind of structures? Large ones, sir. Much larger than our intelligence reports suggested. I count. At least 15 major installations. And they are not primitive. The captain's yellow eyes narrowed. Define not primitive. Klaktash's manipulator arms worked frantically at her console. Sir, I am detecting energy signatures consistent with plasma weapon arrays. Force field generators. Advanced sensor equipment that is actively scanning us right now. A cold feeling settled in Vexthal's stomach. Show me. The main display activated, showing the blue and green planet exactly as their intelligence files had described. But surrounding it was a network of space stations that definitely did not match their briefing materials. Massive cylindrical structures bristled with weapon emplacements. Smaller platforms moved in coordinated patrol patterns. Most disturbing of all was the largest station, a ring-shaped construct that could have housed their entire ship in one of its docking bays. How did our intelligence miss this? Growled Karax from the weapon station. Before anyone could answer, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A voice speaking perfect galactic standard filled the bridge. Unknown vessel, you are entering restricted space. Identify yourself immediately or face defensive action. The bridge fell silent. The voice was calm, professional, and absolutely confident. It was not the voice of a primitive species asking for help. It was the voice of someone who expected to be obeyed. Vexthal gestured to Zephylos. Open a channel. The blue-skinned communications officer nodded, his head tentacles twitching nervously. Channel open, sir. Vexthal drew himself up to his full height and put on his most intimidating expression. This is Captain Vexthal of the mercenary vessel Bone Harvester. You will surrender your world immediately or face the consequences of resistance. The response came immediately, without any hesitation or fear. This is Commander Sarah Chun of Terran Defense Station Olympus. You are attempting to enter a protected human colony world. By Galactic Accord 2847 Alpha, any hostile action against human settlements will result in immediate retaliation by the Terran Federation. The words hit the bridge like a physical blow. Vexthal felt his blood turn to ice in his veins. Around him, he could hear sharp intakes of breath from his crew. Yorick, the tactical officer, actually dropped the datapad he was holding. Humans, whispered Slickstar, his breathing apparatus making wet, panicked sounds. Every mercenary in the galaxy knew about humans. The species that had appeared in galactic space 300 years ago and somehow convinced every major power to sign protection treaties. The species that had fought a three-way war against the Kethver Empire, the Crystal Collective, and the Void Hunters simultaneously and emerged victorious. The species that was declared off-limits by unanimous vote of the Galactic Council. Sir, Klagtash's voice was barely a whisper. I am detecting multiple ships approaching our position. How many? Vexthal demanded. I cannot tell. They are using some kind of stealth technology. My sensors show empty space, but I am detecting gravitational disturbances that suggest large vessels. The human voice spoke again. Still calm and professional. Captain Vexthal, you have 60 seconds to explain your presence in this system. Any weapons targeting of our installations will be considered an act of war. Vexthal's mind raced. The intelligence had been completely wrong. This was not a primitive world with chemical rockets and metal bullets. This was a human colony, protected by technology that made his own ship look like a child's toy. Sir, Zephylos said urgently, I am receiving a priority communication from our intelligence broker. Put it through, Vexthal ordered, the nervous voice of Sliptide. Their amphibian information dealer filled the bridge. Vex, get out of there now. I just discovered the collective fed us false data. That is not a primitive world. That is New Terra, a major human agricultural colony. You are about to start a war with the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The transmission cut off abruptly, probably jammed by human counterintelligence systems that were already tracking their communications. Captain, Commander Chun's voice returned. Your 60 seconds are up. Please state your intentions. Vexthil looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were hardened warriors who had faced death countless times without flinching. Now they looked terrified. Everyone knew the stories about what happened to those who attacked human worlds. The lucky ones died quickly in space combat. The unlucky ones lived long enough to face human ground forces. Sir, Yorak spoke up from the tactical station. I am reading weapon locks from at least 12 different sources. Our shields are already being probed by targeting scanners. The captain realized they were trapped. Too far from the hyperspace jump point to retreat quickly, surrounded by invisible ships that could destroy them at any moment. Facing a species that had earned its fearsome reputation through 3 centuries of warfare. Open the channel, Vexthil ordered. Commander Chun, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. We were given false intelligence about this system. We believed this was an uninhabited world available for mining rights. We had no knowledge of human presence here. There was a pause before the human responded. Captain, our sensors indicate your ship is equipped for planetary bombardment. That suggests more than mining surveys. Vexthil closed his eyes. The humans were right, of course. The bone harvester was armed for conquest, not exploration. There was no way to explain away their presence as a misunderstanding. We are mercenaries, he admitted. We were contracted for planetary pacification. But we were not told we would be facing humans. Another pause, longer this time. When Commander Chun spoke again, her tone had changed slightly. Still professional, but with an edge that made Vexthil's scales prickle with fear. Captain, you have 2 options. You can power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded for questioning about who sent you here. Or you can attempt to leave this system and face the consequences of threatening a human colony. Vexthil looked at his crew again. Klektash was staring at her sensor readings with all 6 arms frozen over her controls. Korax had moved away from the weapons console as if it might explode. Even veteran warriors like Yorak looked ready to surrender. The captain was about to respond when alarms began wailing throughout the ship. Red warning lights bathed the bridge in crimson as automated systems detected immediate threats. Sir, Klektash shouted over the alarms. 3 large vessels, just a cloak directly behind us. They have weapons charged and targeting systems locked onto our engines. On the main display, 3 sleek ships appeared as if materializing from empty space. They were smaller than the bone harvester, but moved with deadly grace. Their hulls gleaming with advanced armor plating that seemed to absorb scanner beams. Commander Chun's voice returned. Calm, despite the tactical situation. Captain Vexthil, those are Terran Federation destroyers. They have been in this system since you entered it, waiting to see your intentions. Please make your decision quickly. My orders are to protect this colony by any means necessary. Captain Vexthil stared at the 3 human destroyers on his main display, their weapons trained on his ship with deadly precision. The bridge of the bone harvester felt smaller now, like a trap closing around him and his crew. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. Zephylos, he ordered, his voice tight with controlled panic. Get me a secure connection to Sliptide, now. The blue-skinned communications officer's head tentacles writhed nervously as he worked his console. Sir, the humans are jamming most frequencies, but I can try a narrow beam transmission using our emergency protocols. Do it, while Zeflos worked to establish contact. Vextal turned to study the human ships surrounding them. The destroyers moved in perfect formation, their hulls reflecting the light of the system's star. Each vessel was perhaps half the size of the Bone Harvester, but something about their design suggested they packed far more firepower than their size indicated. "Connection established," Zeflos announced. "Audio only, heavily encrypted. Slip." Vex still barked into the communicator. "What did you do to us? You said this was a primitive world." The voice of their information broker came through the static, high-pitched with terror. "I am sorry, Vex. The collective gave me the data directly. They said it was standard planetary survey information. I had no reason to doubt them." "You had no reason to verify it either," Vextol snarled. "Do you know what you have gotten us into? New Terra is one of the biggest human agricultural colonies," Sliptide babbled. "Over 50 million humans live there. It supplies food for a dozen other human worlds. The defense fleet alone has more firepower than most planetary governments." Lieutenant Claketesh looked up from her sensor station, her compound eyes wide with fear. "Sir, I am detecting additional ships moving into position around the system. At least 20 vessels, possibly more. They are maintaining stealth fields, but their gravitational signatures are massive." Vex still felt his stomach drop. "Slip, why would the Hegemony Collective hire us to attack a protected human world?" There was a long pause before their broker answered. "I have been making inquiries since you left. The Collective has been trying to get mining rights to the new Terra system for decades. The humans keep refusing because the orbital mining would disrupt their agricultural operations. And if unknown pirates were to attack the colony, it might create enough chaos to void the current mining treaties. The Collective could then offer humanitarian aid and renegotiate new agreements under emergency protocols." The pieces fell into place like dominoes in Vextil's mind. The Collective had not hired them to succeed. They had hired them to fail spectacularly. The mercenaries were supposed to attack, cause some damage, and then be destroyed by human defenders. The Collective would claim no knowledge of the attack while quietly moving in to help rebuild the damaged infrastructure. "You used us," Vextil said, his voice deadly quiet. "The Collective used us as expendable pawns." "I did not know," Sliptide protested. "I thought it was legitimate work." "Captain," Commander Chun's voice cut through their conversation. "You have been silent for 5 minutes. I need your decision now." Vexthul gestured for Zeflos to close the connection to Sliptide. He stood up from his command chair and looked around the bridge at his crew. These aliens had trusted him to lead them safely through countless dangerous missions. Now his poor judgment had brought them face to face with the most feared military force in the galaxy. "Open the channel to Commander Chun," he ordered. The human's voice was still calm and professional, but Vexthul could hear the steel beneath her words. "I am waiting." "Captain, Commander, we have been deceived by our employers. The Hegemony Collective provided us with false intelligence about this system. We were told this was an uninhabited world, suitable for mining operations. We had no knowledge of human presence here." "That is an interesting claim," Chun replied. "However, your ship is still equipped with planetary bombardment weapons, and you did threaten to attack our colony." Vexthul closed his eyes. The human was right. Regardless of who had lied to them, the Bone Harvester had entered human space armed for war and issued threats. There was no easy way out of this situation. "Commander, what proof would you require to verify our claims?" "Full access to your mission files, communication records, and intelligence briefings. Our technical teams will need to examine your ship's computer systems to confirm your story." Yorak, the tactical officer, made a low growling sound. "Sir, they want access to our entire database. That includes information about our other clients, past missions, crew records, everything. Vexthal understood the implications. If they allowed the humans aboard, they would learn every secret the Bone Harvester carried. Client identities, safe house locations, hidden supply caches, personal information about every crew member. It would be the end of their careers as mercenaries. What are our alternatives? He asked Chun. You can attempt to leave this system. However, I should mention that attacking a human colony, even unsuccessfully, carries certain consequences under galactic law. What consequences? Any organization or individual who threatens human civilian populations is placed on the Terran Federation's priority target list. That means every human military unit in the galaxy receives your ship's identification codes and orders to engage on site. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems and the occasional beep from sensor equipment. Vexthal knew what that meant. Humans had colonies, trading posts, and military bases throughout inhabited space. Being placed on their target list was effectively a death sentence for any mercenary crew. There is a third option, Chung continued. You can provide evidence that the Hegemony Collective deceived you into this attack. If you can prove they used false intelligence to manipulate you into threatening our colony, the Federation might be willing to pursue them instead of you. Claketesh looked up from her console. Sir, I still have all the original intelligence files the Collective provided. Mission briefings, target assessments, payment schedules, everything. And I recorded all our conversations with their representatives, added Zeflos. Standard security protocols. Vexthal felt a small spark of hope. If they could prove the Collective had deliberately sent them into a trap, perhaps the humans would focus their anger on the real culprits instead of the expendable pawns. Commander Chun, he said carefully, we have complete records of our briefings with Hegemony Collective representatives. Digital files showing the false intelligence they provided about your colony. We were told this world had a population of primitive mammals with chemical weapons and no space defenses. Primitive mammals, Chun repeated. And Vexthal thought he detected a hint of amusement in her voice. That is certainly one way to describe humans. Very well, Captain. Here is my offer. You will transmit all relevant files to our tactical center for verification. If the data confirms your claims about collective deception, we will allow you to leave this system with a warning. If the data suggests you are lying, you will face the full consequences of threatening a human colony. It was not much of a choice, but it was better than certain destruction. I accept your terms, Commander. Excellent. Please prepare your files for transmission. And Captain, I would suggest you find new employers. The Hegemony Collective appears to have used you very poorly. As Zeflos began uploading their mission files to the human space station, Vexthal slumped back into his command chair. 3 decades of mercenary work, and he had finally encountered a job that was too good to be true. The payment should have been his first warning. 50 million credits for attacking a primitive world was ridiculous money, even for a crew of their experience. Sir, Claketesh said quietly, I am reading massive energy buildups from the human defense stations. They are charging weapons that I cannot even identify. Vexthal nodded grimly. Even if the humans accepted their evidence and allowed them to leave, this mission had taught him something important about his place in the galaxy. The Bone Harvester and its crew were small fish in a very large ocean, and they had just learned what happened when small fish threatened the apex predators. For 20 tense minutes, the bridge of the Bone Harvester was quiet, except for the soft sounds of data transmission. Captain Vexthal watched the upload progress on his command display while human destroyers maintained their position around his ship. Every few seconds, Lieutenant Claketesh would report new energy signatures as more human vessels moved into scanning range. Upload complete, announced Zeflos. All mission files, communication records, and intelligence briefings have been transmitted to the human station. Now came the waiting. Vexthul knew the humans would examine every byte of data with their advanced computer systems. They would verify timestamps, check for alterations, and probably run the files through analysis programs that could detect lies hidden in digital records. "Sir," Klektesh said from her sensor station, "I am detecting unusual activity from our weapons console." Vexthul turned to look at Korax, the demolitions expert who served as their weapons officer. The massive bear-like alien was hunched over his controls, his thick fingers moving across tactical displays with surprising delicacy. "Korax, what are you doing?" The weapons officer looked up with an expression Vexthul had never seen before. Korax's small eyes burned with something between rage and desperation. "I am not running away from mammals, Captain. I have fought the Crystal Collective. I have killed void hunters with my bare hands. I will not be humiliated by soft-skinned creatures who evolved from tree-climbing prey animals." "Stand down from that console immediately," Vexthul ordered. Rising from his command chair, "No." Korax's voice was calm, which made it even more frightening. "These humans hide behind their reputation and their treaties. But reputation is just fear, and fear can be broken. One good strike at their civilians will show the galaxy that humans bleed, just like everyone else." Vexthul felt ice forming in his veins. "Korax, if you fire on that colony, you will start a war that will kill us all." "Maybe," the weapons officer admitted. "But better to die fighting than live in shame." Around the bridge, other crew members began moving. Yorak, the tactical officer, started reaching for his sidearm. Slickstar, the medic, backed away from his station toward the exit. Klektesh's 6 arms froze over her controls as she realized what was happening. "Weapons charging," Korax announced, his hands dancing over the tactical console. "Target locked on Agricultural Dome 7. Secondary targets identified in the civilian residential areas." "Korax, stop." Vexthul lunged toward the weapons station, but the massive alien was faster than his bulk suggested. One huge arm swept out, catching the captain across the chest and sending him crashing into a bulkhead. Warning alarms began wailing throughout the ship as Korax overrode safety protocols and brought the main plasma cannon online. The bone harvester had been designed for planetary bombardment, and its primary weapon could crack a mountain or vaporize a city block. "This is Commander Chun." The human voice cut through the chaos on the bridge. "Captain Vexthul, our sensors detect weapons charging aboard your vessel. You have 30 seconds to power down before we respond defensively." Vexthul struggled to his feet, tasting blood from where his forked tongue had been bitten during the impact. "Korax, the humans will destroy us." "Let them try," the weapons officer snarled. "Plasma cannon at full charge. Firing in 10 seconds. Yorak finally managed to draw his energy pistol, but Korax was wearing personal armor that could shrug off small arms fire. The tactical officer fired twice, the bright energy bolts splashing harmlessly off the weapons officer's chest plating. 5 seconds, Korax counted down. 4, 3, fire at will. Commander Chun's voice was sharp and final. "All units, weapons free." Korax reached for the firing control just as the universe exploded around the bone harvester. The human attack was unlike anything Vexthul had experienced in 3 decades of warfare. Instead of the familiar plasma bolts or missile strikes he expected, the ship was hit by weapons that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Energy beams that bent around their shields and struck the hull directly. Projectiles that phased through armor, plating before exploding inside the ship's structure. The main plasma cannon was destroyed in the first second of the attack, along with most of the weapons control systems. Korax was thrown across the bridge as his console exploded in a shower of sparks and molten metal. The massive alien hit the far wall and slumped to the deck, his armor blackened and smoking. "All breaches on decks 4 through 7, reported Klektesh, her voice tight with panic. "Main engine offline. Life support failing in the aft sections." More human weapons found their target. The bone harvester shuddered and groaned as its hull was systematically dismantled. But Vexthol realized the attacks were surgical in their precision. The humans were not trying to destroy his ship completely. They were disabling it piece by piece, targeting weapons and engines while leaving the crew sections mostly intact. "Sir," Yurak called out from his damaged console, "I am reading 3 more human vessels approaching. They appear to be boarding craft." The attack stopped as suddenly as it had begun. The bone harvester drifted in space, its engines dead and its weapons destroyed. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across the bridge while automated systems struggled to contain dozens of hull breaches. Commander Chun's voice returned, as calm and professional as if nothing had happened. "Captain Vexthol, your weapons officer has fired upon a human civilian target. This action constitutes an act of war under galactic law. Prepare to be boarded." Vexthol looked around his ruined bridge. Korax lay unconscious against the far wall, his breathing shallow but steady. Klektash was working frantically to restore basic ship functions with only 3 of her arms. The other 3 hung limp from electrical shock. Yurak stood at his damaged console, his energy pistol still drawn but useless against the approaching boarding parties. "How bad is the damage to the colony?" Vexthol asked quietly. There was a pause before Chun answered. "Agricultural Dome 7 suffered moderate damage. No casualties reported. Our defensive systems intercepted your plasma blast before it could cause significant harm." Relief flooded through Vexthol. If the humans had suffered civilian deaths, there would be no negotiation, no mercy, no chance of survival for any of them. The fact that their defensive systems had stopped Korax's attack meant there might still be hope. "Commander, my weapons officer acted against my direct orders. The rest of my crew had no involvement in the attack." "That will be determined during questioning," Chun replied. "Our boarding teams are equipped with biological scanners that can detect stress patterns consistent with truthful statements. Anyone who cooperated with the weapons officer will be identified." Heavy impacts echoed through the ship's hull as human boarding craft attached to airlocks. Vexthol could hear cutting tools beginning to work on the external doors. The humans were not waiting for permission to come aboard. "All crew members will remain at their stations with their hands visible," Chan continued. "Any resistance to the boarding operation will be met with lethal force. We are particularly interested in speaking with whoever provided your intelligence about this system." The bridge doors slid open with a mechanical hiss. 6 figures in advanced combat armor entered with weapons raised. Their faces were hidden behind reflective visors. But Vexthol could see his own frightened expression reflected in the polished surface. The lead human spoke with a voice that was electronically modulated by the suit's communication system. "I am Sergeant Martinez, Terran Federation Marines. Which one of you is Captain Vexthol?" "I am," Vexthol said, slowly raising his hands. "You will accompany us to the detention area for questioning. The rest of your crew will be processed individually." As the Marines secured his crew, Vexthol caught sight of more human soldiers moving through the ship's corridors. They moved with smooth efficiency, like a machine designed for this exact purpose. Every action was coordinated, every movement precise. "Sergeant," Vexthol said, as restraints were placed on his wrists, "what will happen to my crew?" The Marine's visor turned toward him. Behind the reflective surface, Vexthol thought he could see eyes that had seen too much combat. "That depends on how cooperative you are, Captain. The Federation takes attacks on civilian targets very seriously." As he was led off his own bridge, Vexthal caught one last glimpse of the tactical display. It showed the human defense fleet surrounding his disabled ship. Dozens of vessels, from small patrol craft to massive battle cruisers. All of them had been hidden in the system, waiting. The bone harvester had not stumbled into a lightly defended agricultural colony. They had attacked one of the most heavily fortified systems in human space, and somehow the humans had been expecting them. Vexthal realized this had been a trap from the beginning. Not just the Hegemony Collective's scheme to use them as pawns, but something larger. The humans had known about the plan and allowed it to proceed, turning the Mercenaries' attack into a demonstration of human, military-powered dot as marine escorts led him through corridors filled with his defeated crew. Vexthal wondered if anyone in the galaxy truly understood how dangerous humans really were. The detention cell aboard Terran Defense Station Olympus was surprisingly comfortable. Captain Vexthal sat on a simple bench, staring at walls that seemed to be made of some kind of advanced composite material. The lighting was soft and natural, nothing like the harsh fluorescence he had expected in a military prison. 3 hours had passed since his capture. 3 hours of waiting while human interrogators processed his crew one by one. Through the transparent barrier that served as a cell door, he could see Terran Marines moving through the corridors with calm efficiency. They treated their prisoners with professional courtesy, providing food and medical attention without any sign of anger or revenge. The cell door slid open with a quiet hiss. Commander Sarah Chen entered, no longer wearing her military uniform but dressed in simple civilian clothes. She carried a datapad and a cup of what smelled like coffee. "Captain Vexthal," she said, settling into a chair across from him. "Thank you for waiting. I apologize for the delay, but we needed time to verify your story." Vexthal studied the human woman carefully. She appeared to be middle-aged by human standards, with graying hair and lines around her eyes that suggested experience with difficult decisions. Her manner was calm and professional, showing no trace of hostility despite the fact that his crew had just attempted to attack her colony. "Have you completed your investigation?" he asked. Chan nodded, consulting her datapad. "Your files were quite comprehensive. Communication records with the Hegemony Collective. Intelligence briefings that were clearly fabricated. Even financial records showing how they manipulated the payment schedule to ensure your cooperation. So, you believe our story?" "The evidence is conclusive," Chan replied. "The collective deliberately provided false information about our colony. They knew exactly what they were sending you into." Vexthal felt a small surge of relief. "What about my crew?" "Most of them will be released with a warning. Your lieutenant, Klaiktesh, was particularly helpful in providing technical details about how the intelligence deception was carried out. Your medic, Slickstar, and your communications officer both cooperated fully with our investigation. And Korax?" Chen's expression hardened slightly. "Your weapons officer fired upon civilian targets. That cannot be overlooked, regardless of the circumstances that brought you here. What will happen to him?" "He will face trial under galactic law for attacking a protected colony. However, his actions were limited to a single weapons discharge that caused minimal damage. If he cooperates with our investigation of the Hegemony Collective, he may receive a reduced sentence." Vexthal nodded grimly. It was better than he had dared hope. "And myself?" Chung leaned back in her chair, studying him carefully. "That is more complicated. You are the captain, ultimately responsible for your crew's actions and your ship's presence in our space. I understand. However," Chung continued, "your immediate cooperation and your attempts to prevent Korax from firing suggest you were genuinely deceived by the collective. The Federation is prepared to offer you a choice." "What kind of choice?" Chum set down her datapad and looked directly into Vexthal's yellow eyes. "The Hegemony Collective has been attempting to manipulate human mining contracts for decades. This attack on our colony was just their latest scheme. We need evidence that will hold up in Galactic Court to prosecute them for conspiracy and attempted genocide. You want me to testify against them. More than that, we want you to help us gather additional evidence. The collective will attempt to claim they had no knowledge of your attack. They will destroy records, eliminate witnesses, and use their legal resources to avoid responsibility. Vexthul considered this. What would you need me to do? Return to your normal activities as a mercenary. Accept new contracts from the collective and other clients. But this time, you would be working for us, gathering intelligence on their operations, recording conversations, documenting how they manipulate and exploit mercenary crews. You want me to become a spy? Chun nodded. In exchange, all charges against you and your crew would be dropped. You would receive Federation protection and a substantial payment for your services. When we have enough evidence to destroy the collective's leadership, you would be free to retire with honor. It was an interesting proposition. Vexthul had always prided himself on his independence, but the events of the past few hours had shown him how easily that independence could be manipulated. The collective had used his crew as expendable pawns, willing to sacrifice them all for a chance at better mining contracts. What if I refuse? Then you will face trial for threatening a human colony. Your crew will be released, but you personally will spend the next 20 years in a Federation prison. The choice is yours. Vexthul stood up and walked to the transparent barrier, looking out at the corridor beyond. Human personnel moved past with quiet confidence, secure in their knowledge that they served the galaxy's most powerful military force. He thought about his crew, scattered throughout this station while human interrogators determined their fate. If I agree to help you, what guarantees do I have? Chun joined him at the barrier. The word of the Terran Federation. We do not abandon our allies, Captain. Ever. And my crew? They would be given the same choice. Work with us to expose the collective's crimes, or face the legal consequences of their actions. Most of them were clearly victims of deception, so I expect they would receive favorable terms. Vexthul turned back to face the human commander. How long would this arrangement last? Until we have enough evidence to prosecute the collective's leadership in Galactic Court. Probably no more than 2 years. During that time, you would operate your ship normally, accepting contracts from various clients. The only difference would be that certain missions would be specifically designed to gather intelligence on collective operations. And afterward, complete freedom. New identities if you prefer them, settlement rights on any Federation world, or enough credits to start fresh wherever you choose. It was a generous offer. More generous than Vexthul had any right to expect after leading an attack on a human colony. But something in Commander Chun's manner suggested this was not simple mercy. The humans had their own agenda. Why is the Federation so interested in destroying the Hegemony Collective? Chun smiled for the first time since entering the cell. Because they represent everything we oppose. They use violence and deception to steal resources from peaceful worlds. They manipulate smaller species into doing their dirty work while hiding behind legal protections. They are parasites that feed on the suffering of others. And humans? We believe in protecting the weak from the strong, in holding the powerful accountable for their actions, in making sure that species like yours are not exploited by corporations that see you as disposable tools. Vexthul studied the human woman's face, looking for signs of deception or hidden motives. But Chun's expression was open and honest. Whatever her reasons, she genuinely seemed to believe in what she was saying. I accept your offer, he said finally. Chun nodded and made a note on her datapad. Excellent. Your ship is being repaired as we speak. Our technical teams are installing some upgrades that will help you gather the intelligence we need. Nothing obvious, just enhanced communication equipment and improved data storage systems. When do we leave? Tomorrow. There is already a new contract waiting for you, arranged through our intelligence networks. The collective wants to hire you for a job on Kepler Station. Apparently, they believe your attack on our colony was successful and that you are now wanted by Federation forces. Vexthil almost smiled at the irony. They think we are fugitives. Exactly. Which makes you perfect for the kind of illegal work they preferred to keep secret. Over the next few months, you will become their most trusted mercenary crew. And when the time is right, you will help us bring them down. As Chun prepared to leave, Vexthil had one final question. Commander, was this station really as heavily defended as it appeared? The human woman paused at the door, her hand on the control panel. Captain, what you saw today was a light patrol force. New Terra is an agricultural world, considered low priority for military defense. If you had attacked one of our industrial centers or military bases, you would have faced 10 times as many ships. The cell door slid shut behind her, leaving Vexthil alone with that sobering thought. His crew had attacked what humans considered a lightly defended target, and they had been overwhelmed in seconds. The true scope of human military power was apparently beyond anything the galaxy had imagined. On the small table in his cell, someone had left a recruitment poster for the Terran Colonial Marines. The slogan at the bottom read, "See the galaxy. Meet interesting species. Protect humanity's future." Vexthil stared at the poster for a long time, finally understanding why every species in the galaxy had agreed to leave humans alone. It was not fear of their weapons or their ships. It was fear of their absolute certainty that they could protect what they valued, no matter what the cost. Tomorrow, he would begin working for the most dangerous species in the galaxy. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Vexthil felt like he was on the winning side.